Hello and welcome back to Checkmate Gaming. I'm I Hold Shift. Hopefully you're joining me for the right reasons and not because of some things that were said in the last video. We are going to be doing a recap of everything that happened on the final day of the CDL Florida home series. That does include all of the teams that played in the Challengers portion of the home series, which is where we will start our recap first. Very quickly, we'll go through all of these mostly because the scores were not fully reported for most of these games, but we'll start over in the Asia Pacific region. Ignore what you see on the little banner above. I kind of forgot to change the region name when I was making the graphics. By the time I realized it, I had already gotten rid of them. So let's take a look at what happened in Asia Pacific. Your top two teams traditionally have been Renegades and Mindfreak. That wouldn't necessarily be the case in the winners finals, as Team Pine were able to beat Mindfreak, sending them to the losers bracket where they would play in the losers semis versus a team called Rift Nation, who has historically been in the top four over the last handful of weeks. Renegades would play up against a squad named Team Pine, which is a little bit of a newer squad, only a couple days of practice, and they kind of combined a couple of the stronger members from the third, fourth, and fifth number teams in APAC, and it looked like it was going pretty well for them with the addition of James, JHR, who we haven't seen since the 1K series. This one, though, 3-0s across the board. Renegades able to deal with Pine, although I believe the series was a little bit closer on the search and the dom than it was the hard point. Mindfreak able to deal with Rift Nation at a 3-0 scoreline as well, would send Renegades to the grand finals. Mindfreak playing up against Team Pine. Mindfreak looked very good. I had a chance to cast over the top of this one. Their search and destroy was nice and fast-paced, very polished. The only real question was what was going on with their domination. That's the map that they lost. 3-1, Mindfreak move on to the grand finals, where they would get another shot again versus Renegades, a team that they have really yet to fully compete with at a certain level. That wouldn't be the case here. Very tight series, pretty much all the way through. Went all the way to Game 5 after Mindfreak again was showcasing their strength on Search and Destroy. They were also able to clean up some of their woes on the Hacking Yard domination, but from there on out, Renegades would bounce back, take map number 4 and map number 5. Renegades win this APAC region at a scoreline of 3-2. Jumping over to Europe, this was one of those regions where we started to get a couple of question marks as far as the scores that were reported, but Singularity is most notably playing with a new player. Chain has been benched, and in his place came in Gizmo, a guy that had been playing with an up-and-coming EU squad and was looking pretty solid, so he got his shot to play today, and they would be in the winners finals versus that London Royal Ravens sub-roster of Wee Man, Mad Cat, Nasty, and the gang. That was the name of El Jefa. And then on the bottom side, Train Hard once again. They'll be playing up against Team War. Team War did lose in their round 2 to the boys of El Jefa. They were able to obviously get through their round 2 losers bracket, and then in the losers semis, where they had a little bit of a tough time here, as Train Hard would take the 3-0 versus Team War. Singularity, similarly so, would lose 3-0 to El Jefa. Train Hard, okay, we see you. Historically, and over the last couple of weeks, they have been the number 4 team in Europe. Haven't had much success versus the top 3 teams. Maybe that would change here. They got their shot versus, again, a newer look for Singularity, where, again, Train Hard found themselves a 3-0. Okay, Train Hard getting into the mix. They would play up against the ex-Royal Raven squad, and things would not go all that well for them here. I don't know the score report, but El Jefa would take the series with a win. I don't know what the score was, so there it is. So your champions this week, no longer Team War. It's back to the Royal Raven squad. I think it's going to be a pretty rotating wheel, but Train Hard finishing second, I think, is very encouraging, and it'd be interesting to see how they do in future weeks. Going over to North America, no scores were reported throughout the losers semis to grand finals, but here are your 4 teams. Triumph played up against Wester, a team that was hoping to kind of correct some of their mistakes from previous weeks in the form of Triumph, and Carnage Gaming has been finding their way back into the top 8. They beat the Atlanta FAZE Academy team to knock them out, and then would get their chance versus UYU. Again, scores were not reported here, but Triumph were able to beat Wester, and with that, UYU were able to beat Carnage Gaming. So Wester versus UYU. Again, UYU was a top 4 team last time around. Could they potentially get to the grand finals for the first time in what feels like a while? The answer would be no. Wester too good for them here as they take the W, giving us a rematch in the grand final, of which Triumph Gaming was able to take. So Triumph, your champions in North America, the Royal Raven squad, the champions in Europe, and Renegades, the champions in APAC or APAC, however you call it. Let's dig into the playoff series, though, for what happened in the CDL version of everything. OPTIC Gaming would play up against Toronto in the first matchup, and today, I wish I could give you descriptors on everything, but You really just need to go back and rewatch it. It was a very good day of Call of Duty. We'd start this series off on Ramaza for the hard point, as it was a very back and forth affair. Optic would give themselves a small advantage leading into the final hill. Again, 200 to 200 plus. They were able to fully hold things up and go up 1-0 after the 250 to 229. Optic Gaming, though, they had been looking good in their search and destroy since the addition of Chino. Ramaza did not go Optic's way. Toronto was able to take it in a convincing nature, 6-2, to tie things up 1 map to 1 map. Then we go to domination. Again, Optic over the last couple of weeks have been getting better and better and better in domination, and the recent addition of Chino didn't seem to hinder that progress at all. How about this, though? It would be played on Gunrunner in a very tight affair, tighter than you could ever imagine, but Toronto were able to manipulate the last about 40 seconds just a bit more in their favor and take the 142 to 141. Toronto up. Would Optic Gaming see their hopes dashed? Well, we would go back to another hard point as we had another tight series all the way through that came down to a final hill rotation, which again, Optic were able to hold 250, 227 on the Gunrunner, bringing us to the map 5, Arklov Peak. It only seemed right that we would get around 11, and we absolutely would get around 11, in which Optic were able to take 6-5, a 3-2 map count. Optic Gaming make it to the grand finals. It could have been anybody, let's be honest. It could have been either of these two teams. It was such a good series. Again, if you did not get a chance to go and watch it, I highly recommend watching all the games from day number 3. Atlanta playing up against New York. Now, again, the consideration here was Atlanta, last time they played New York, got beat up by New York in the hard points, and their search and destroy has not been good over the last 2 weeks. Could Atlanta still find enough power to get past New York? We would start that journey on Gunrunner hardpoint. And back and forth we go. We would start that journey on Gunrunner for the hard point. Back and forth we'd go. Beautiful breaks from both teams, keeping things right in line, to heel and toe all the way through. But Atlanta at the end were able to hold for what felt like the first time a key crucial hill, 250 to 222 in a tight one. Then we go to the search and destroy. This is where Atlanta has not been all that great. Atlanta would look good in the first 5 rounds, and then all of a sudden, Temp decided in a 2v4 he was going to lay right on top of a planted bomb and just ninja defuse this right over the top of Priesta. That would be where things would swing, and New York would find themselves a 6-3 win. The search and destroy woes for Atlanta FaZe continue in this semifinal. But then we'd go to domination. This is where New York has not been necessarily good, and they feel like you would need to be good. If you're going to play up against Atlanta, you need to find a way to try to take one of the respawns away, hopefully one of those being a dom. It would not be the case here. 166 to 141. Atlanta FaZe just had their way with New York a number of different times in that third map. Going to map number 4, Hackney Yard Hardpoint. Okay, now we're starting to see the power that this New York team can bring together as they find a way to kind of go up early, and they find a way to keep the lead all the way through this until the very last second, where accuracy would look absolutely incredible to hold on to the final hill, 250 to 247, a tight one, a real tight one. Came down to a P5 contest and break. It was beautiful. Again, it was such a good day for games. So then we go to a map number 5. Would Atlanta be able to correct their mistakes on search and destroy? We'd find out on Gunrunner, and the answer would be yes, we've got this. Don't worry about it. It was a 6-3 Atlanta versus Optic Gaming LA for the championship, and you just felt like there was something in the water here where Optic were going to look incredible throughout the day, and well, they sure did. Hardpoint, Azir Cave up first, a scrappy battle all the way back and forth as Atlanta FaZe were starting to make a comeback near the end, but Optic Gaming would shut that down before it got too interesting, and Optic would draw first blood, 250 to 232. Atlanta FaZe, Arklov Peak, used to look good for them. Used to see that mode map combination come up and you said, Atlanta's got this in the bag. Hold on, not so fast. It would come down to around 11 where Celium would have to clutch up a 1v2 to level things up. and boy did he ever. Gets a huge double up, and that would be enough for a round 11 win. Atlanta FaZe able to salvage away a search, and then from there it was game on. Again, the domination has been Atlanta's game mode pretty much all the way through the year. That would be the case once again, this time on the Hackney Yard, 170 to 149. Map 4, St. Petro Hardpoint, a map in which Atlanta has been a little bit all over the place. They've gotten smoked here, and they also have done their fair share of blowing up teams on this map. This one would be a super tight affair, but in the end, Atlanta FaZe just a little bit better over the middle of the map, going from 2 to 3 to 4 in my mind, and that was just enough to keep Atlanta in the driver's seat. 250-232. Atlanta take the win. So now we take a look at what our standings will look like. Honestly, this is pretty wild because now there's starting to be a little bit more separation in the mix, but I don't even know where to begin when it comes to things like power rankings. Atlanta FaZe will be in first with the 50 points they get this weekend at 170 total. In second is Dallas at 150. Third will be the Chicago Huntsmen as they're at 130 points. And then Minnesota and Florida to round out your top 5 at 110 and 100. Then we start to get into the battleground between really 6th place and 11th place. 60 points for the Paris Legion, 50 for both London and OPTIC after their good weekend here. Toronto makes their move forward a little bit further as they find themselves at a 40-point tie with Seattle and New York. And then Los Angeles Guerrillas, who obviously had the week off, are still stuck at just 20 points. A big weekend coming up next weekend as we'll go to Seattle. To Seattle, where Chicago, they'll be in a group with Paris and Minnesota and OPTIC Gaming LA. And then the other group will be London, Los Angeles Guerrillas, Seattle, and New York. A very interesting Group A right there. London, LAG, Seattle, New York. That is where points need to happen for all 4 of those teams. That's going to be a big pool for those guys. So we'll do, of course, another breakdown of format as we get ready to go, as we get closer to the date of which it'll be happening. We will be doing power rankings, and we'll also be talking about the possible Pristini move to Chicago. So if you like that kind of content here with Call of Duty, make sure you subscribe here to Checkmate Gaming, and we'll catch you guys for the next video. Until then, hope you keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.